Hey, either one of you guys know about engines?
Yeah, sorta, I guess.
Hey everybody, and thank you for watching another video. My name is Murge, and welcome to the Breaking Bad What If series that I call the Heisenverse, a series where I make a change somewhere in the Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul timeline and explore how that one change ripples throughout the entire universe. And in this video, I wanted to explore the idea of how the series would have turned out if Drew Sharp survived, and what kind of impact his life has on the series going forward. Like, how does this change affect Mike, or Jesse, or even Todd? Well, that's what we're here to find out. And I have to give a special shout out to Bruno149 for recommending this idea because honestly, I wouldn't have chosen this idea, but there was something about it that made me think, I think there's something here. And if you could leave a like on this video to support the channel, I'd appreciate it. And who knows, maybe I'll go with your idea next. But with all that being said, let's get into it.
I'm talking about an ocean of this stuff.
As Walter and Lydia discuss this ocean of methylamine, Mike and Jesse stand outside with Mike voicing his concerns about trusting Lydia. But Jesse tells Mike, "Come on Mike, give him a chance, he's good at this kind of stuff." He says taking a drag from his cigarette as they continue to wait. And after Walter explains the concept of leverage to Lydia and having him swear on his kid's life to keep her safe from Mike, she would provide him with the simple yet complex plan of robbing a train.
Like Jesse James?
Yep, just like Jesse James. And as Mike and Walter bicker about how to go about executing the plan, whether it's switching back to a pseudo cook or just killing the engineers altogether, either way they have to make money for the legacy cost. And the person to come up with a plan to bypass both options would be none other than Jesse. And while playing with a straw and a cup of water, he says,
What if we can rip off that train and no one ever knows they got robbed?
The next day while planning for the heist, our trio is getting everything ready, from burying the tanks to checking the distance, the whole 9 yards. But this is the part in the story where I make my change. So instead of it being Jesse, Todd, and Walter doing the heist and Kubi on the track stalling the engineers, in this version, Todd and Kubi would switch roles. And I honestly wouldn't have any real reasoning behind this change other than maybe they would just trust Kubi more for the fact that he works for Saul as opposed to Todd, who was basically just a thief working at a fumigation company who just started working for them maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. But that's just me. So getting back to the heist, everything goes according to plan, just like the original, and once successful, they all begin to celebrate their take. And Walter would be the first to notice the young boy on his dirt bike near the underpass of the train tracks. Then Jesse notices, giving a slight look of panic at the side of the boy. Kubi would be the last to notice, but he's the first to react by waving and smiling at the kid as he tells him in a calm but friendly demeanor, "Hey kid, I'm so sorry, but we're actually doing some construction over here and it's not safe for you to be around here at this time." And at first the boy is quiet with a blank expression on his face as everyone starts to worry because they don't know what he saw. But then the boy starts speaking Spanish to them, and surprisingly, Kubi knows Spanish as well, and the boy was just being friendly, asking if they needed help with anything. And Kubi would tell the kid the same thing that he told him earlier but in Spanish. And just like that, the kid waves one more time and he just drives away, unknown that the biggest train heist in US history just took place mere moments ago. And just as a precaution, later on that night they would get the excavators out there and dig up the methamphetamine tank and have it moved to a different location, and once successfully relocated, they would get to work. And after a couple of months during their new operation with this ocean of methylamine along with Lydia's Czech Republic connections, things for our trio has never been smoother. There's no cartel, no competition, and most importantly, no more blood on their hands. And you know that idea that Walter floated to Jesse?
Cooking 100 pounds a week, not 50. As in starting a new lab. A lab that you'll run. A cook all of your own. Why not? You deserve it.
That is exactly what happens, and in almost no time, there is so much money being made that it's almost hard to keep track of. Even the hazard pay deductions are no longer an issue for them. And keep in mind that the hazard pay is like $351,000 per month or week or something like that, I'm not too sure. But with how the business is doing, it's like pennies to them at this point, with Walter even coming to accept it as just part of the price of doing business. And one day while he's on his way to babysit his granddaughter, Mike notices that he's being tailed by another DEA vehicle, which is becoming to be like a daily routine at this point for the past few weeks. And usually he would just throw the tails, but being that he's doing nothing illegal, he would just continue to head over to his daughter-in-law's house. And while Mike is watching Kaylee, the two are in the backyard building the steps for her treehouse, but this time, when he looks at her, he's reminded of his son, Matty, which causes him to think back on his line of work that he's chosen for the past few years. From being a dirty Philly cop to working for Gus and now working with Walter, he can only imagine what his son would think about him right now. A thought that gives Mike clarity, because the whole reason for him doing what he does was the same reason for Walter, family, and making sure that they had what they need after he's gone. And when his daughter-in-law returns relieving Mike from his babysitting duties, she thanks Mike for always helping out with Kaylee, and Mike would respond with a half smile telling her, "It's never a problem, sweetie. Anytime you need me, I'm only a phone call away." Thanks, Mike. So, how's work treating you these days? She questions. Work is work. There was a change of management a few months back, but I recently just been considering retirement because the job is becoming a little... Let's just say that things aren't how they used to be, Mike responds. Wow, really? That's so good. I mean, the retirement part, because I know that Kaylee would just love to see her pop more, but I just hope your job gives you a nice severance package. She says with happiness. Oh yeah, I'm sure that we can come to some kind of negotiations, but anyhow, I'll see you later, sweetie. Call me if you need anything, he says, giving her a hug before leaving the house. Later on in the evening, Mike calls a meeting with Walter and Jesse at the office, and he tells them, the reason I called this meeting today is because for the past few weeks I've been throwing DEA tails, and Wait, you're telling me you've been followed by the DEA and you're just telling me this now? Jesus! Did they follow you here? I said I threw them, Walter. I would never bring the DEA to our illegal meth operation. That would be unwise. I've been doing this for a long time. So long, in fact, that I know when I have my fill. And I say that to say, I'm out. Mike says, turning his back as the room grows silent, and Walter looks at Jesse and then at Mike before saying, well, I'm sorry to see you go, Mike, and I wish you the best. Jesse and I have— Now, we discuss my payment, Mike says, cutting off Walter this time. Payment? What payment? Walter says, confused. 1/3 of that methylamine belongs to me. Now I have a buyer out in Phoenix that's interested, or to make it easy on everyone, you can just buy my share and continue your operation without me. It honestly makes no difference. Mike says, looking at both Walter and Jesse. So it's either you sell our methylamine to the competition, or we buy it from you. And what's your price? Walter questions with his arms folded across his chest. $5 million, and I'm not selling our methylamine, it's just my share, Walter. Mike says in a slightly firm tone. So $5 million and you're gone. And what about your guys in prison? Says Walter. Once I get my money, you won't have to worry about my guys or the hazard pay that you're so fond about. It'll be coming out of my cut, Mike explains. And after a couple seconds of pacing, Walter agrees, throwing his hands up, telling Mike, fine, you win, Mike. $5 million is all yours. Just give us a few hours to get the money. Tomorrow, 4 o'clock, Saul's office. Bring the money, Mike says before leaving Walter and Jesse in the room. And once alone, the two discuss Mike, with Jesse saying, Mr. White, I think Mike has a point, with him being out. I mean, I know for a fact we both have way more than $5 million each. And maybe, who knows, we can sell that methylamine to Mike's guy in Phoenix and we can be out too. Jesse, we nearly died trying to get that methylamine. And now that we finally have everything that we need, you're just gonna sell out for what? Pennies off the dollar? Walter says, trying to persuade Jesse to stay. I don't know. All I'm saying is, how much is enough, Mr. White? Jesse says with a deep sigh as he begins to walk towards the door, and he says before leaving, I'll bring my half of the money to Saul's office tomorrow. See you then, Mr. White. And as Walter stands alone in his office with nothing more than his thoughts in a 1,000-gallon tank of methylamine, Jesse's words echo in his mind. How much is enough? The next day we pick up with Walter and Skylar on their way to the storage locker, and at this point Walter has no idea the exact amount of money he has, but he knows he has enough to cover Mike's payment. So when he sees the Volkswagen-sized pile of cash in the storage locker, Skylar basically says the same thing as Jesse.
How much is enough?
And that's something that really resonates with him because he's done exactly what he set out to do, and somewhere down the line, he just lost track of his goal. And while he fills a black duffel bag with cash, he looks at Skylar in the eyes and he tells her, I just have one more thing to do. Trust me. And before you guys get started in the comments, remember, even though Walter did say he was a part of the quote empire business, when he seen that money, everything changed for him. So take that with what you will. We then pick up in Saul's office with Walter being the last to enter the room, and he comes up with an alternative offer for Mike saying, you said you have a guy that's interested in buying the methylamine. Yes, I do, Walter. Why? Mike questions. How does he feel about buying wholesale? Walter says, which surprises everyone in the room, especially Mike and Jesse. And he continues saying, and I'll tell you what, Mike, you can even keep the $5 million that me and Jesse brought you as a finder's fee. So that's $5 million you can put under hazard pay, $5 million for yourself, and you still walk. Mr. White, does this mean? Yes, Jesse. I'm out. Walter says, finishing Jesse's sentence. And Mike looks at Walter, still with a look of shock on his face, and he just says, let me make a call, as he steps out the office. And Saul then speaks up in a friendly tone saying as Mike leaves, so, $5 million for a bunch of guys in lockup, huh? Well, who else can you trust other than your lawyer, am I right? And while Walter sits on the couch, he responds to Saul by saying, the hazard pay is Mike's area, so you have to ask him yourself. Okay, point made, but you know that Mike's been using this second-rate lawyer Dan Washburger to make his drops, and I'm sure he's a great guy, but I know for a fact that if push came to shove, he would flip in an instant, which would start a domino effect that leads the feds right to your front doorstep, which is exactly what you don't have to worry about with me. What don't I have to worry about with you? Mike says, re-entering the office and closing the door behind him, and Saul says nervously, well, Mike, I feel that maybe I should be the one handling the drops for you. Be done, Mike says, cutting off Saul, then directing his attention towards Jesse and Walter. My guy says he's willing to pay $15 million for the 1,000 gallons of methylamine, and he'll be here this weekend to make the deal. And that news gets everyone excited for the future, and with Saul taking over the hazard pay, the risk of being caught by the DEA is completely minimized because, this is Saul Goodman, criminal lawyer, and if this job was made for anyone, it's him. And when the weekend rolls around, our trio meets up with Declan, and true to his word, he buys the 1,000 gallons of methylamine for $15 million, and their business would officially be concluded. And Walter, Mike, and Jesse all now go their separate ways, but now as millionaires. And for Jesse, I would say that he gets back with Andrea and they begin to date more seriously and eventually get married, and not too much longer after that, maybe they leave town to travel the world now as a family with her, Jesse, and Brock. As for Mike, he would live the life of a retired grandpa, and although the DEA is still tailing him, after a while they would stop and forget about him altogether. And with Saul now handling the drops, all 9 guys are paid consistently for the foreseeable future with no issues. And after a while, the DEA even stops pressuring the 9 guys so that they prove themselves that they're not talking no matter what, which forces Hank and Gomez to direct their attention to more important cases. And seeing how there hasn't been any word of the Blue Sky meth in months, all they can do is move on. And as for Walter, now that he's out, not only does he have his kids back, but he also has Skylar's love, and honestly he has everything that he's ever wanted at this point. And the day before the family barbecue, Walter, feeling nauseous, would vomit in his toilet, and while he's cleaning up, he would grab the Walt Whitman book that Gail gifted him and bring it to his nightstand near his bed, and he kisses Skylar goodnight and he tells her, "I have a really good feeling about tomorrow." And being that Walter decided to be out with everyone else, Todd was never considered to be anything more than a fumigator and the guy who drove a truck on the train tracks. A change that prevents any more suffering in the Breaking Bad universe, at least by our major players. But then again, whenever there's a power vacuum, there's only a matter of time before someone fills it. Hey everybody, and thank you for watching another video, and I really hope you enjoyed another story from the Heisenverse. And this may have been the best case scenario for all of our characters. Jesse wouldn't be an emotional wreck, and not to mention getting tied up with Todd. Mike is able to retire and live out the rest of his life in peace. And for Walter, all of his secrets remain safe, from him poisoning Brock to watching Jane die, and of course Hank never finding out. A genuine happy ending, all thanks to the real hero of the story, Patrick Kuby. But that's just me. But now I want to hear from you guys. What did you think of this story? Did you like it? Did you hate it? What other stories would you like for me to cover? Whatever it is, let me know down below in the comments and I'll do my best to respond. And yes, if you have a really good idea and you kind of give me a little plot to work off of, I will make sure that I can continue your story if I like it, and I'll even shout you out again. But until then, my name is Murge. Later.